Okay. Hello, I am Mary and I run Fat Girls in Fiction. And this month I'm happy to be celebrating 4 years. I can't believe I've been doing this for 4 years. And I am so excited to have this wonderful panel of authors to discuss the current state of fat representation. Um, I'll just kind of go in the order. We have S.J. Tilley, who writes some wonderful dark indie romance. And we have Gabrielle Gamez, who I think might be the newest author here with us. I
Just debuted last year, so maybe.
Rick's Best Fling was one of my favorites, and you have a new one coming out, which is a sapphic Mexican love story, right?
Yes, Kiss Me Maybe, which comes out May 6th. Yeah.
Oh, and I forgot, S.J. Tilley, you have the Mountain Man one coming out soon, right?
Like 3 weeks, yeah,
Woo!
March 27th. Yeah,
And
nice.
then Talia Hibbert, who I just am so thrilled you're joining us from the UK. And
Yes.
I came to her through the Brown Sister trilogy, which has been one of my favorite reads ever. So thank you, Talia, for joining us. And then we have Amy, Aidy Award, and she has kind of been a mentor through me through my whole writing process. The one of the first things I ever did was a panel back. It was a long time ago with the Right Women's Book Fest. And
Yeah,
it
it's
was
so long ago.
me and Amy and Leo Gonzalez and Molly O'Hare, and it was wonderful. So she has the wonderful Kingman brothers, and then all kinds of paranormal. Do you have
Mhm.
any new stuff coming out soon?
My next Kingman Brother book comes out in May, and I have not revealed the title yet.
Ooh.
Ooh.
And then Amy Spalding, who I have read. I love your books. I read the Summer of Jodie
Jordy
Perez,
Perez,
correct?
Summer of Jordy Perez.
Yeah, and then our book club last year did for her consideration, and we loved that one. I love the celebrities. And are all of your books sapphic?
Since 2018, yes.
Wonderful. And what do you have coming out? And it's coming out soon.
My most recent book, On Her Terms, came out last week.
Woo! Oh yeah, I've seen you've been
Nice.
busy hopping all around doing a small little book tour, huh?
Yeah, I went all over the country.
Wow, that's
Wow.
amazing. I'm so excited to have this wonderful mix of authors from traditionally published to indie, and it's just all of you write some of my favorite fat representation. So thank you for joining me. Um, I thought we could talk a little bit first about what made you decide to write women or any characters really living life in bigger bodies. Um, Whoever wants to take that first, and then we can kind of go.
I'll start.
Okay.
I decided to write my very first Kirby Girl romance. It's all I've ever written. But I started working on my first book in 2013 because there wasn't a whole bunch of Kirby Girl romance out there. I had read maybe two. And so much of the representation of fat women in romance was the funny fat friend, or the villain, or the woman who had to lose weight to get her happy ever after. And that was not what I wanted to read. I wanted to read about someone like me who didn't have to lose weight to be able to find hot schmexy man and have a happy ever after with him, whether he was a dragon or a football player. Right?
No.
And so I started writing them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I mean, kind of on the same side, I started writing as like for fun. I didn't actually think this would be like a career. And I've never been a thin body. Like, so I don't know that experience. Obviously, I've also never been married to a mafia man. So like not everything I write is like things I've personally experienced. But like when you're doing first person POV, like I've literally never been thin. Like, and there's not, obviously nothing wrong with that, but like I just didn't know how to write that. So I just wrote my girls with asses and, you know, curvy figures. And after I started writing, it just kind of became the thing. And it wasn't until like I actually published and started having conversations with other authors, because I was not in this community at all. Like I was always a reader, but I wasn't in book talk or Instagram or any of that other stuff. So I didn't have any connections. And so once you start talking to readers that are like talking about representation, and it was kind of one of those things that like you kind of realized you did without I don't want to say without meaning to, because obviously, we wrote the whole book, so like you meant to at some point. But it was like, oh yeah, you're right. Because now when I go to read other books and she's, described a certain way that I can't relate to, it takes me out of it. And so it now it's just like it's never going to change. I'm never going to not write those characters. And some will be bigger than others, and some will be, more self-conscious than others. But that's just because again, we are even in our same bodies in the same day, like we have different feelings. So, because I do get feedback too. People that are like, I don't want someone that's just always like talking about their weight. And it's like, well, yeah, but they're not going to, so it's like, but that's just who they are. So it's like a part of their daily life.
Yeah, when I wrote The Summer of Jordi Perez, which came out in 2018, so I was writing in like 2015 or so, I felt like, and that book's a young adult novel, but I felt like every YA novel I read about a fat girl was just like, like I thundered across the room and my like heavy thighs chafed each other and like I barely managed to strap my watch around my fat wrist and then I like grabbed a sack out of my closet and like barely got it over my head and like I can't wear necklaces because my neck is too large. And I'm like, what is I've never not been able to wear a necklace. Like, what's happening? And also, if you can't, fine. But I don't find that to be like the typical fat experience. And it just made me so mad. And like, I felt like every time I saw a body, like I would like look up, at a commercial. I was like, oh, that girl's cute. She like has a body like me. And they're like, before Sarah got help. And I'm like, oh no, I'm the before. Why can't I be the after? I'm fucking rad. Sorry, can we curse? I just did. Anyway, I wanted to write a book where a girl was fat and cool and no one, like people cared and she was like, you're dumb, I am correct. And it like it changed my life to write that book because I heard from so many people who were like, oh my God, yeah, could we just be regular? That is all we want. Not to be like the coolest ever, just regular. And after that, I was like, well, this is just going to be a thing I do. And it's not necessarily every book because like just for various plot reasons, not every book the main character ends up being a fat girl or woman. That said, I'm still a fat author writing it. I'm still someone who believes in fat positivity, body neutrality, all of that. So, even if I'm writing about like too thin women, they're handling shit, like God, this cursing. I'm so sorry. I'll try to behave myself.
We're
Anyway,
fine.
I think it matters who's also writing about straight size people. And if it's people who have compassion for all size bodies and all, level of ability, I just think you're still going to write those characters better too.
Yeah.
I think for me, this book was the first time I'd ever written a character who was plus size or fat or what have you. And I think whenever I'm writing, I'm usually like writing to process. So I guess it was me processing my own feelings without it being like too central to the plot because it's really just, like this is the body she lives in, this is what she experiences, but it's not like a focal point at any point in the story because obviously the focal point would be the romance. Um, but I think it was something that I hadn't really thought about writing or integrating into any of my stories until I started seeing that representation in other authors in the stories that they were writing. So like Olivia Dade and like Talia Hibbert, who is here. Um, and I I think that changed so much for me because it was something that I think I didn't really know that I was missing until I had it. And so now it's part of my thing. It's like part of why I integrate it into my stories now. And just I think like hearing the feedback from readers and just saying like how like they've been through that or like they can relate so much to it. I think it just like makes me so happy that they feel that way or that they feel seen that way and like maybe that they had never had before. And I think that just further like makes me determined to keep going.
Mm. I was influenced by other authors as well, both positively and negatively. And it's interesting, Amy Spalding, that you mentioned disability as well, because I feel like body neutrality there's so many links between disability and like fat acceptance. And for me, when I was reading as a teenager as like a moment of escapism, so frequently there would be scenes of sort of like the thin fetishism, I guess, or they felt that way to
Mm.
me. That was so rampant at one point. Like, and her waist was so tiny that he put one hand around it, and I'd be like, "What?"
She's
And
this
that
big. She's so delicate.
she's this big. And that always pulled me out of the experience in the worst way because I was dealing with a lot of body image issues and disordered eating, and I was trying to get like diagnoses, and obviously they were like, "Oh, you're fine, you just need to lose weight." And I was like, "Oh, I guess it's my fault." So that was a big issue for me, and like one of my main problems with romance, which was my favorite thing. So it was terrible to have, that glaring out at me. And then I discovered authors who were writing people in bigger bodies like Rebecca Weatherspoon. That
Mhm.
was a huge one. And reading it, it was like, okay, this actually is what I wanted to read. This feels really positive and healing and doesn't make me feel terrible and think about terrible things. And so, when it came to me writing my own romances, I was like, I want to create that kind of experience for my readers as well. And so that was it.
Yeah, I think for me, I will just say that I am someone, we're all writers. We've all been writing on some level for most of our lives, whether it's short stories or AO3 or wherever it is. And I had never written a fat character. Like it had never even occurred to me to write a fat character because of the thin bias. And so it wasn't until I started reading, Olivia Dade and Talia Hibbert, and also Rebecca Weatherspoon was one of my first as well. Her and Katrina Jackson were really high up there on some of the first ones I read. And I was like, oh, like it's possible. Like, and that's just what I think is also so special about representation is sometimes you have to see it before you can believe it. And so it's those authors that came ahead of me also inspired me. So I think it's really important work that we're doing. And I will say what I think we kind of hinted at this a little bit is what writing this type of representation means to readers. And are there any interactions that you've had with readers that really mean something special to you that you can think of?
I'll jump in. I've done a lot of like in-person like public signings in the last year or so, and I don't have any one, but the amount, like, I couldn't even give you a number, the amount of women that have like come up to my table already crying and like giving me a hug, making me cry. And I'm like, I can't go like you guys. I have a whole day of this. I can't start crying now. But like, and they'll just be like, like they've either never read it before or never like connected in that way, or like you said, like it was always about losing weight or something, but they're just like, and I think we've said healing too, right? Like we all grew up in this society where it's just like, that's what we've been taught forever. That's how we've always felt. Like we've never seen ourselves as the main characters. And like I think the first time that happened, well, I instantly started crying too. But the first time that happened, I think it really hit me because like you get messages. I'm sure we've all gotten those through Instagram Messenger or something. And they're always really nice. And like not to talk down on those either. Like those are like really sweet. But have like a physical body in front of you, asking if they can give you a hug as they're like crying about this. Like that's when I was like, okay, this means something. Because I think too, like again, like this will be a side tangent, like in society, right? We still have to fight for a place for romance to be taken seriously. And like that shit right there was like, this is serious. This is real. Like we're doing real things, even if it's just for escapism and has nothing to do with body positivity. Like it's still important because it's art, but like to be able to have someone tell you that like you've helped fix something inside of them, like that was huge. And that's where I was like, okay, so we're doing good things here. Like we're gonna carry on.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
Honestly, I think what we're doing is more important than we can even know because just like SJ said, I've had so many readers say something about how reading a character that looked like their body changed their life, like literally changed their life. I think one of the earliest ones that I heard that made an impact on me was I had one of my readers tell me, I have left my relationship because I realized that he was not treating me, and I don't mean like a romance hero, but he was treating me badly
Mhm.
because of my body. And I didn't want to acknowledge that as a person, but reading books where women who look like me do get treated well helped this reader see that her relationship was crap.
Wow.
And it changed her whole life.
Yeah, we really are out here fighting the good fight. I think there's something particularly healing about reading it because you get to just soak in those characters' emotions. And even if they're not, if you're not, if a large part of the plot isn't about the fatness itself, it still helps you to just digest and really kind of feel those feelings. And it's nice to feel good in your body. And it's not something that fat people are often granted the ability to feel often. So I think our
Stories,
books kind of grant that escape.
they absolutely do because stories inform our world. Stories are how we learn how the world works. And it's a place for us to be able to imagine that the world can be like the world that we see in the books. It's how we learn, I mean, even from little when we read storybooks, that's how we learn how the world works. And if we're representing a world that actually has happy fat people in it, that's literally revolutionary.
But also it's regular. Do you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like I'm not like writing about a dragon to say that by the way, everyone who writes about dragons are awesome. But like as far as I know, we don't have dragons. But like we have happy fat people all over. And so it's always like weird to me to hear that like anytime someone's like, wow, how do you do that? I'm like, or like not making fat the point of the book. It's like, I genuinely don't think about being fat other than like what size am I buying when I buy too many outfits. Like it's not like that's every time I read like I was quoting earlier, every time like a thin person tries to write about fat people, they're like, oh, I hate my body. I looked at my body. I have to deal with my body. And I'm like, my body is just my body. I'm not at war with it all the time. Like, I think that's such a just because someone else has a feeling about what it must be like. It's just like when, sometimes when straight people write queer characters and it's all about the suffering and the marginalization and the abuse. And I'm like, I don't know. That's not what I'm thinking about most of the time. My queerness is joy. My fat body is neutral. Like, it's just like,
Yeah.
and for me, so much of the power of writing fat characters is sometimes less about like, I don't know. I think there's dismantling stereotype work in just representing how regular everyone is and how like my day-to-day concerns are the exact as yours. And look, I don't write books for thin people. If they read them, that's cool. But I will say that like I like spreading the message of like the way I feel is the way I feel. And also the way other people talk to me is the problem, not the way like I look or my body functions,
Yes.
etc.
Yes, I think that's so important is to realize that they are the problem and that it's not you. And yeah, I love that sentiment. All right. So we're kind of have touched on it a little bit, but when I started Fat Girls in Fiction 4 years ago, I feel like the landscape was different back then. Like it felt like we were in like the Lizzo era and stores were like putting their larger sizes in stores, which was revolutionary. And there was this moment. And that's when I started Fat Girls in Fiction. So there was a lot of momentum. And there's been kind of some backsliding that has happened recently. And I mean, I blame, of course, the diet culture and the new wave of diet drugs because you can't have an entire industry that if people feel happy about their bodies to try and make them change their bodies. And I was just wondering if you guys had noticed that and how you have seen that affect the plus size community.
When I was at the Texas Book Festival in November, there was someone who asked a question about that specifically, and just I think like about like the backsliding, and I mean, like you said, like we can blame the diet culture and the wave of Ozempic, and just I think like the way we're backsliding was so sneaky, where like it happened in a completely new way, and like there were like I guess like new degrading terms like big back is one on TikTok and like I think it snuck up on you because it was again like in a new way and then obviously like now we're in another Trump term where we kind of see even more backsliding with just like other things in general, but that's a whole other topic. um But yeah, like I think we're definitely seeing that effect and like on readers noticing it as well. And just feeling like maybe in a way like we're not seeing as many books as we were before, like in like the past like 5 years like we did. Or like I guess just having to dig more, I think, is really what we're doing. We're really having to dig more for like the authors who are writing about like fat representation and things like that. But I remember one of the things that I told her, and I feel like this is true for both real life and for fiction, when we are writing fat characters, is that one of the best things you can have is a good support system. So like in your friends, and not even just like the love interest, like obviously like loving her body, but just like in the friends that she has and the support systems that she has, like there aren't people in your life who are bringing you down. And I mean, that's not something that we can always control or like always go no contact or things like that. But I think it's more important than ever to challenge that, and to have those conversations, even if they do feel uncomfortable, because that's the only way that we're going to stop that backslide, at least in our own lives.
Yeah. Um, for my part, because I myself am not plus size, and I have a relative who is white passing, and she often says to me that because people think she's white, they feel so comfortable saying things to her about black people or about whoever. And similarly, people feel comfortable saying things to me that they wouldn't feel comfortable probably saying them to the face of someone whom they apply to. And so I have noticed that it's become so much more acceptable now, like it used to be, say, 10 years ago, to make these comments and to act as if it's normal to comment on people's bodies and to, idolize one body type over another. Um, and I really think that it's to do with the whole political landscape at the minute and the economic landscape, because I feel like fat phobia is a form of control.
Mhm.
As you guys have already mentioned, it's an attempt to get money out of people by making them miserable so that they'll pay any amount to feel like they're fixing something. And also, it's a way to be able to silence people and devalue people. And I feel like it's all really connected, like Trump's term and the rise of right-wing politics globally and here in Europe. And I feel like the only thing that we can do is like go harder, and whatever position you're in, if you are in a position of privilege like I am, then you have to be making the most noise and defending people the most, I think. So that's what I think.
Yeah, and I also think there's power, and if you have, even if you are plus size and you know you come under more discrimination or under fire, like to be a visible voice of like this is a valid. I mean, it feels so ridiculous to be like I'm a valid human. Like, yeah, obviously, but like I don't know. I believe in being really visible. It's really important in my social media that like my body is front and center and not in like a just in like a literal, this is what a person looks like. Isn't this normal? It's fine. I agree that it feels very much of the current political landscape. And I just think there's this idea now of these like lawless, uncontrollable bodies and whether or not that's someone plus size or a queer person, a trans person, someone who doesn't conform to any sort of gender binary, that's just like uncontrollable to a certain political mindset and therefore dangerous. And I'm like, great, bring it. Like literally, if you think I'm dangerous because like I'm fat and queer, but literally I'm just a lady who wants to write books and eat snacks, like whatever. But I mean, it's like so boring how, these like radical acts are really. So I just think being as visible as possible about it is our best fight forward and combating it. I also just think like I want everyone to just live the life they want to live. And if right now some of these like new drugs are benefiting you medically, whatever else, fine. The thing that concerns me is there's so much fat phobia baked into the medical community that I feel like I have friends who get advice and I'm like, I don't think that's real. Have you actually read any studies on this? And they're like, well, it's always better to weigh less. I'm like, that's not true, actually. There's many situations where it's not, or it's neutral. It's not and if you want to lose weight, like just lose weight, fine. I'm not gonna stop you, but it does upset me how often sort of like the medical terminology is used to just make fat phobia more acceptable.
Oh, 100%. And like the term like conformity that you said too. And that's like, I mean, you can trace back like the ties of thinness to like white supremacy bullshit, like, and just again, time means nothing. I can't remember, but like recently there was, I don't, you probably all saw it. It was like going around, but it was like the shortest woman and the tallest woman in the world, like taking pictures next to each other. I don't know if you guys saw this. Like she was like 2 feet tall and she was like 7 feet tall. And I was like, these are both women, why are we trying to all have the same bodies, right? Like, because look at these two, like, they're not going to be the same. So even if you and I are the same height, like, we're not going to be the same. Like, so trying to force your bones into a different body just doesn't make sense. And like the medical thing is so true. And when people comment on people's bodies, like, we've all seen it. Someone like loses a bunch of weight and people are like, oh, they look so good, which I hate that fucking term. Like, don't say someone looks good just because they've lost weight. Turns out this person has like cancer, or something like that, that they find out something medically is wrong with them. But people for the last 6 months have been praising them for how good they look when really it's like their body is destroying itself, so it's like in these comments and I have boomer parents and I've had to say this like before to people where you're like, stop saying someone just looks good because they've lost weight. Like you don't know what they're going through. You don't know what mental struggles they're going through, what issues they have with food. Like, so again, we have like this like weird, and again, it's society. Like we've been brought up this way, even if our parents are good, like my parents are good. They didn't like shame me, but like I grew up in the fucking 90s, like we all watched America's Next Top Model, like, and just like that.
Some of us are very old, actually, but that's okay. I support young people. And like we didn't all grow up in the 90s.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it's like we all were affected by it. Like we were all still alive then, right? Like, so you guys saw it. Like it affects our psyche whether we want it to or not, and having to fight against that and like justify yourself, like you said, and like again going to the doctors and being like, I'm stressed because I'm gonna get weight and I'm gonna be told to lose weight, or you bring up the BMI and like all these other things where you're like, this means nothing. Like it's obnoxious.
Right. I hurt my wrist. It has nothing to do with the fact that I'm fat.
No, right.
But I do think I've seen in the last 12 years that I've been publishing, when I first started writing fat characters exclusively for my heroines, there wasn't anybody else except for one other author that I knew that did that. Um, and there's been more. There's been more, and there's been more, and there's been more. But I actually think in this new world, Ozempic world that we've developed in the past, I don't know, 3-ish years. Also, what is time? I don't know. I feel like every commercial that I see these days is row and get healthy and whatever, all of the GLP-1 drugs that are being pushed on us all of the time. I am also seeing a lot more, especially romance, with fat plus size characters. So much more than there has ever been before. I never had a group like this where I could talk to a bunch of other authors who also write plus size characters. It was me and one other girl.
Yeah.
So even though we're getting pushback and sliding back in society, I think we're also pushing against it at the same time, because I can find dozens and dozens of plus size romances now when before I couldn't.
Yeah. I think there has been a lot of growth there in the past. Because when I started Fat Girls in Fiction, it was harder to like pick through, especially like there's always been a handful of indie authors doing it, but traditionally, I think the space really opened up. And I think the first book I saw do it traditionally in the way it's done now that had nothing to do with weight loss or changing yourself was Bet Me by Jennifer Cruzy. And I mean, is that perfect representation with the fascination with donuts and food and all of those things? No, but it was the first book that I think was the first vein of what we have now in plus size representation. So it's started a while ago and it's growing, and I think it's really important that there are so many stories now. And even when you look at Fat Girls in Fiction, when I started Fat Girls in Fiction, I can't think of any other person who was highlighting plus size representation in that way. And now there are so many wonderful accounts who do what I do. And it's getting to so many readers. And I just think it's a really cool thing. And now if we want to talk about writing itself for a little bit, we all, as writers, come at the process differently. And I was wondering if you guys could each share something that might be unique or just kind of fun about your writing process with the readers.
Okay.
Are we all like nothing about my writing process is unique?
I mean, I'm an outliner. I don't know about everyone here. I know I have a lot of friends that are pansters, and I cannot wrap my head around that. But I guess like I don't think it's weird, but then I talk to people and they're like, well, it's kind of weird. But like I listen to one song, like I listen to music while I write, and I do one song on repeat. And sometimes it'll be for 3 hours, sometimes it'll be for 2 weeks. Because it's just like whatever vibe. And it's not necessarily the lyrics, because sometimes I'll have listened to a song for like literally days and then I'll catch a lyric. I'm like, the fuck? But like, so it's like the vibe. So if anyone asks what I'm like, it's like the vibe, but like the lyrics don't matter, but I just need to like completely zone out. And that's how I do it.
I do that too with the song on repeat. And it's not even necessarily like the lyrics match up with the scene. It's really just like the vibe of the song or whatever. But I'm not an outliner. I am a pantser. I'm not an outliner. I am a pantser. And I I think it's hard sometimes, but I I think if I had like an outline or some sort of plan, I don't think I would be as motivated to write. I would just be like, okay, the scene is in my brain, and now I must get the scene in my brain onto the page. So maybe I'm a planner in that way. It's all in here, but it's not like anywhere written down until I write it, actually.
Bold.
I don't want to be a buzzkill, but I want everyone to try to outline. And I feel like, because I used to be like, that's where the magic is, the writing. Outlining's for losers who want to know what happens. No journey, just a path you've already walked. It's not true. There's so much discovery still. And then you do less revising later because you catch your mistakes as you're going. Mistakes, opportunities for growth. So I'll just say, I just encourage you to be like me now versus me in the past who had to do like so many more rounds of revisions. But also, look, we all have our own journey. Do whatever you want. I'm such an outliner now. I so believe in it. I have like a very intense spreadsheet system that has made people cry when they see it because it's too upsetting. Oh my God, I have one here. Do you want to see it? It's so upsetting.
Yes.
You're all like, give it. Yes.
Like it's like this many columns. Do you see how big this is?
Yeah.
Wait.
There are pages that have like, oh my God, like so many notes on them. I don't know. It's intense. And this is the version that gets printed after it's been typed on for months. So like, I don't know. I think that doesn't make me fun or quirky. That makes me like deeply upsetting, and people get concerned about me. But you know what? The books get written.
I just want to say my outline is in my notes app on my phone. I am not that organized. I am not type A in any way, but it does
Is
make
it
me write
organized or is it
faster.
like something's wrong up here and I put it into a document and then it's work? Who could say?
Either way, I mean, but that's how when you're Gabriella, when you said like you have like an idea in your brain, I'm like, that terrifies me because I'm like, I need to put it in my outline.
Yes.
I'll forget it. So like every night as you're falling asleep, I'm like, oh shit, here's an idea. Write it down. You'll never remember it in the morning.
Yeah.
That's very,
I mean,
like, I don't know.
sometimes oh, sorry.
I was just gonna say, I don't know how many other people have ADHD. It feels like a lot of writers. And I have real ADHD, not like meme ADHD. I have both ADHDs. A doctor said yes, but also the memes resonate. But if I don't write it down that second, I will lose it. But I just write it into the outline.
Okay.
I think it depends usually on like, I guess like what specifically it is, or if it's like 4 in the morning and I like jerk awake and I'm like, okay, let me write this in my notes app and then I'll figure it out in the morning.
Yeah.
Okay. I think my weird thing is that I will start in the Scrivener file and I like to use, the little scenes on there. I like to sort of title them with the vague information that I already have about the beginning, middle, and end and move them around. And then I go into the Notes app on my iPad so that every scene is like completely, it's like a black screen. All I can do is write. I can't look at anything else. I can't think too hard. Otherwise, I'll just second guess myself and rewrite the same scene 10,000 times. So just like type it, move on. Or handwriting sometimes does the same for me. And then at the end, I just dump it all in Scrivener. I move it around like a jigsaw puzzle. And then when I'm editing, I go into Word.
A lot.
I make spreadsheet people cry. Here's my notes.
Love that.
I call myself a plantser. So I'm not a plotter, but I'm not a planner. I mean, I'm not a total pantser either. I need some basic knowledge of where I'm going. So I use a thing called the W plot, and it just has 9 plot points on it. And so I'll plot those out, but sometimes I'll only do like the first 4 because welcome Hades to the call. Because I know that as I start writing the story, the second half is completely gone by the time I'm in like chapter 4. And I will have to just replot it anyway. So why even plot it in the first place? But I do spend a lot of time up in my head. I need to think about books literally for years before I can write them. And I didn't realize that I was doing that really until I started writing the Kingman series. And I have been thinking about the first book in that series for probably 10 years. And it was hard to write, even though I had been thinking about it for so long. But at the same time, it was easy to write because I had been thinking about it for so long. Huh, Tuk Tuk.
Yeah, I think it's interesting how, we all come out with books, but the process is just so different and personal at the same time. Like, I am learning my characters for years in advance, like dreaming up who they are. And then I have like 5 or 6 scenes I want to hit in the story. Like, those can be inspired from the most random things, but I know the overall story and certain scenes I want to hit. So that's basically my outline is those scenes, and then I kind of connect the dots. So it's really interesting how that all comes together. For writing advice, if I know everyone gets all kinds and gives all kinds of writing advice, but have you ever heard one that just kind of really stuck out to you?
I think the issue with writing advice is that it's like the most personal thing because even
Mhm.
all of us talking just then about how we write, we barely scratched the surface, and yet there are such differences.
Yeah.
So I really like Becca Syme because she emphasizes like how your brain works is different, therefore what you need to do is going to be different. So I think because I love learning things and I love taking writing courses, but I did tie myself up in knots with it a bit. And then when I stumbled across her work, that was like, okay, I can like pick and mix the writing advice for me.
Yeah. I love Becca Syme as well. I think Amy Award
Yeah,
introduced me to Becca Syme.
Becca changed my life. Like, there's so much writing advice out there that we think we're supposed to take, but some of it is not the right writing advice for us. Like, uh, I remember in the olden days when I used to go to the Romance Writers of America conference, and Nora Roberts would always speak, and her writing advice was um, something about not having a blank page. I can't remember what it is now because I have put it out of my mind because her writing advice spoke to so many people about whatever the blank page was. But it was detrimental to me because I can have a blank page. It doesn't mean I don't have a story. It's just still up here. And I have to work on it up here before I can get it to come out in any reasonable way. Um, and if I try to make it come out, it's a pile of poo.
Can't force it.
Right? So I think writing advice is hard because it's not for everybody, even though some of it is.
Yeah, I think I lucked out. Like I said, I wasn't in the community when I started writing. I started writing in 2019, published in 2021, and I wrote 5 books just at home. Like I got like, 50 some rejections for my first book because I was trying to traditionally publish it. I didn't know what I was doing. But it let me figure out my own way, and like that first book I wrote, I probably read through it 8 times. Now because I plot, I can write fairly fast. Like I start to finish. edit start to finish and I pass it on and I'm done and I don't read it again ever. Like I'll listen to it on audio, but I don't like read it. But so and again, like the creative process is so personal and so unique. And like, this is why I could never be a teacher because I'm like, I know my one way to do something. And if you don't get it my way, girl, I can't help you. Like, so, and I'll have people ask me for advice, which is unwise. Like, again, I don't know what I'm doing, but like, I'm just like, you just have to take the pressure off yourself and just start writing. Like, however that works for you, whether it's a plot, whether it's just writing, for me, again, like, like Amy, you were saying, like, you take off a lot of the revisions if you do plot it, but maybe your main writing doesn't work that way. So like, again, my friends that do it that way, I'm like, it stresses me out because then they're like, oh, I thought of a thread. Now I got to go back. But like, that's just you. So it's like everyone has their own way of doing it. And if you have an author that you love and you want to like talk to them about their process, like I have, I've learned things, but I'm still just going to do it my way. I'm stubborn. So
I actually do teach writing romance, so I am used to telling people, I'm used to giving them writing advice and, notes on how I think things can be best achieved. But I always lead with, if it doesn't feel good for you, it's not good writing advice. The writing advice I hate the most is like, if you don't write every day, you're not a writer. If you don't, like, I always want people to outline because I just think it has saved me years of suffering. And hopefully my skin looks less aged and worrisome from the worrying I don't do as much. But like also if you don't like it, like don't. Who cares? Like if the book is good at the end, it does not matter what went into getting it there. I just like I know where I've been emotionally healthier with some of my writing, but I always want to lead with what feels good to you, what's working for you. And also, annoyingly, I've written On Her Terms, which came out last week, is my 10th book. They all write differently. Like it would be nice to be like, I learned how to write a book, and that's how to write a book. And every time I finish one, I'm like, especially when sometimes they go well. They don't always go well. Sometimes it really hurts to write a book, but sometimes it goes well. And you're like, I learned it. I learned how to write a book. And then you like open a new document and you're like, now I know how to write a book. It doesn't work. It will never work again. So I think
characters
it's
are
often
different.
just like embracing that it's just, but also, isn't that why we do it? If it always felt the same and you just learned how to do it, like, why would I keep doing it? It would be like making a mold at a factory. I don't want to do that.
Mm,
I mean, just
yeah.
to echo kind of what everyone else has said, my writing advice is more advice on how to take other people's writing advice, which is just take what you hear with a grain of salt, and at the end of it, take what resonates, leave the rest behind.
Like
Yeah.
Yoga with Adrian always says.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it is because it's just so that's exactly how I feel. Just yeah, take what you can and leave the rest behind because you can hear 1,000 things and they're not all going to work for you. So I think
Yeah.
that's fun.
Definitely
So
have to find what works best for you. And another plug, Becca Side can help you do that.
yeah. And that yeah, her advice really is about finding the way it works for you, which I mean, we're all authors, so we're all a little creative. And, uh, sometimes it's hard to be creative, especially right now. I don't know if anyone else is struggling, but I just feel like existential dread and being in a creative space don't go hand in hand. So I'm trying, I I am really behind in one of my books because I just can't get into the groove.
Mm.
And so that's when I go to advice, knowing I don't have to take it all. Like, no, but there might be a nugget of something to get me through, even
Mary,
if it's
haven't you
just that
learned
one
about
day.
disassociation? I don't think I'm writing healthily. I just think I like escape into my little fictional world.
Yeah,
And
I
I'm
was
like,
gonna
oh,
say,
it feels so safe here. It is made up, but it feels safe.
my
That's
advice is compartmentalization. That's
Exactly.
how I get through.
That's literally what I was doing for the first 2 months of the year. I was just reading, 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 and then in the back of my mind, I was like, I just sold a new project. I need to finish that project.
Yep. Yeah.
Deadlines, schmedlines.
Yeah, I'm the same as Mary, like trying to go into my brain to find imagination and write, but in my brain is all the anxiety. And I'm like, no, please leave me alone. But it's there.
Yeah, it's so hard. And so now it's like, I used to be, before I was an author, I was in social work. So I was used to working in mentally unhealthy spaces because it was social work. And so now I'm like, I have a job that is really hard for me to do unless I am mentally healthy. And that's been weird.
Good luck.
Yeah.
And now this is a question that I love, but I feel like as authors who write plus size romance, it's kind of difficult. And that's like, I always get asked like the fun fan casting. And it's tricky. But do any of you have people who, when you write your books, who you would fan cast?
For so many of my characters, I go back to Melissa McCarthy when she was playing in Gilmore Girls.
Mm,
Like that fun, bubbly, happy, fat person is often who is in my mind.
yeah.
So she can be for a lot of my characters.
She's a good one.
I'm
But
shit
it's
with names.
annoying
I
that
literally
like
don't know anyone. Yeah, go ahead.
the lack of representation is like I feel like we don't always get to have also like I write like queer women, I write plus size women. It's like there's just often not. I'm like I don't know, like there's not as many like visibly queer women in pop culture. Like so much better. It's so much better. You can actually picture people now. But then you add queer to it, it's just off it, fat, etc. Like I just and I'm also like, hey, Hollywood, come calling. Anyone you say is right, I'll let you cast.
Right.
I mean, I agree. I mean, like you tack on fat, Mexican, and queer for my next one, and then that's an even you spiral even down. But I do have one for Marcella in the next best fling. I was kind of picturing Jessica Marie Garcia. I don't know if anyone has ever watched On My Block on Netflix. It's one of my favorite shows, and I just love her as a character so much. She's so out there for a majority of that show, but just for like the rare like vulnerable moments you see of her, that's when I kind of thought, oh, like I she could totally make like a good Marcella. And like, if I ever had a magic movie deal one day, I'd be like, hey, call her. I want her.
Yeah. Um, I am really into, do you guys know Susan Wokoma?
I don't know
So
who.
have you seen Chewing Gum? She's British, right? So Chewing Gum, crazy head.
Okay.
Um, she is like an incredible comedic actress, but her humor has a real edge and she plays like very complicated characters, which is fun as well because like fat, black, dark-skinned actresses obviously do not get a lot of opportunities and she just plays these incredible out there characters. And I have always thought that she would be amazing as Ruth from my book A Girl Like Her because Ruth is super misanthropic. She hates people. She doesn't mind letting them know. And I just think Susan Wokoma, like if you see this somehow, Susan, call me, be my friend, play my character, whichever.
Well, that's too like when you're talking like actual fan casting, right? And so like again, I don't know anyone's name, but the girl from Bridgerton, like last season, I haven't watched the show, but I've seen
Nicola
the
Coughlan?
clips. There we go, her.
Mhm.
Like she would work great for Val, like the girl from Dom, like like because she's the blonde, the curvy, everything. But that's too like I would love to get movies, Netflix, whatever like that. But like that's something too that like I would also be like, but they have to not be like straight size actresses. Like you have to find a way to do that.
Mm.
And like that would be, I feel like that would be like the biggest struggle would be convincing them to like not ruin that. Because we've all seen like, look, there's books I've loved that have turned into movies and they're gonna fuck with that plot. Like they're going to. Like it's just gonna happen. And it's like you have to kind of let go of that if you're gonna go into that realm. But also I'd be like, but you can't mess with you can't do that to my characters. You can't do that to my girls, and like,
But they
so
would. They would.
yeah. But that's one of those things, like, and that would be like a real struggle for me because I'm like, if not that I don't have any movie deals. All right, guys, like this is not a real issue for me at the moment. But like, if it was, it's like this is what made these things popular with like my fans, like, and so if you ruin that, and even then, when you're talking Hollywood, so now, okay, they'll give you a size 6 or 8, maybe, instead of a size 2, and you're like, that's not what we're talking about either, So So it's like one of those like dream things, but also would also be kind of a nightmare. And I don't know how I would actually handle that.
I
Right.
think I don't know if it's common to do this, but we need to normalize putting it in the contract.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. That
I
would
100%.
definitely be in a contract for
I
doing
also feel
the
like it's
books I
more
do.
important to have the right bodies than the right plot, which I don't know what that says about me as
Mm,
a writer.
I agree though.
Mhm.
Well, for these
Um,
specific stories, yeah, I think so, because like that's huge,
Hmm.
I will also say I don't know if this has happened to anyone else who's traditionally published, but I started getting nervous about mentioning like, like when you get that email from your publisher that's like, "Hey, we're starting to think about the cover. Like, is there any vibes? Do you want to describe the characters?" And twice now I've been like, this celebrity is a good representation of like this person's look or this person or like the outfit. And then they just like draw the celebrity and I'm like, "No, that's super weird. I didn't mean that." Um like the UK cover For Her Consideration, it is just a drawing from the neck down of Kristen Stewart and like a different head. And here's the thing, it looked great. So I at some point was just like, this is fine. But also sometimes you have to be really careful about what you tell design teams because they will just literally do it. And then you're like, I didn't mean literally the celebrity. I just meant like the vibe.
Right. I don't know how many times I've had to talk with character artists, be like, no, I want there to actually be a belly. Like, I'm not just talking hips and butts, I'm
That
talking
is
actual belly.
the two things that have been hardest for me to get illustrators to go right on covers is the way fat bodies actually like look like you said like a belt, not just like wider but like a belt like curves. And that the other thing is like women who are like masculine of center, like they're like, here she is in the, I'm like, no, she like the fit needs to be like this, the like vibe needs to be like, those are the two things that I found really hard for people to get right.
Mm.
Well, we are coming up on an hour. It has been so amazing chatting with all of you. And I don't want to take too much of your time, but if you want to just say what your next project coming up or your most recent release and where the best place is to follow you, like where you're most active. So we can start with you, SJ.
Hey, me. Okay. My next release, I actually have a cover. This is Mountain Boss. So this
Woohoo.
comes out. Yeah, we got hot guy cover, right? March 27th. sjtilly.com has everything. I am most active on Instagram than anywhere else, just because it's easy. Post it in my stories all the time. When you don't want to talk political stuff, like you can follow me there and get all my opinions, and dog pictures. But Facebook group too, Beanbag Book Club. We do a ton of giveaways. I have links to everything on my site. Yeah, everything is on Kindle Unlimited, so hop on that. And everything is also on audio. And I'm excited for this book. I just submitted it to ACX yesterday. This is my first duet narration, which was a lot of fun to listen to because it's like I'm doing work as I'm like just standing here listening to my audiobook. So yeah, follow along.
All right, Gabby, we'll go with you.
Yeah, so I have my books over here. So my debut that came out last year is The Next Best Fling. So we have this one that is out already, and my next one, which is called Kiss Me Maybe, with this gorgeous, beautiful cover right here.
Oh.
And this releases May 6th, and my first sapphic one. And then also, this is a series. So, Librarians in Love. If you've already read The Next Best Fling and you liked Angela or were intrigued about where her story is going, you will get to find out.
All right. Thank you. And where are you most active? Is
Oh,
it
most active on Instagram, and I also have a newsletter that I'm trying to be more active on. And I have the link to that also on my Instagram, at Gabby Writes a Lot.
all right, Talia?
So my next book, it doesn't come out until next year, unfortunately, so I don't have a cover. But it's called The Last Thorn. It is my first romantasy. I'm super
Mm.
excited about it. It's sort of dark, Beauty and the Beast inspired. It's a secret world of magic users who are recovering from civil war. The hero was the hero of the war, and he's like, everything should be fine now, but why am I traumatized? And the heroine was on the wrong side of the war, so they are enemies. And if you want to know more about it, get updates, sneak peeks, or just pictures of my dog, you should sign up to my newsletter, which you can find the link at taliahibbert.com. I'm also quite active on Instagram and TikTok at Talia Hibbert.
All right. Amy Award.
So as Aidy Award, which is my paranormal pen name, I have a new Wolf Shifter book coming out next month, called Blue Blood Wolf. It's like a Prince and Me kind of a story where he's a secret prince hiding at her college, but also he's a werewolf. Um, and as Amy Award, I'm working on the next book in the Kingman series right now. It comes out in June. And I'm pretty active over on Instagram as well. And right now we're having a guessing game to see if you can guess what the title of the next book is. And I promise several people have already guessed it in the comments for sure. But you can find all my stuff. I am at authoramyaward.com because did you know there's an award out there called the Amy Award? It's for
I
philanthropy.
didn't know that, and I'm also named Amy, so I'm intrigued.
Hilarious. The Amy Award is lovely, I'm sure, but they have my website. So I am authoramyaward.com or aidyaward.com where you can sign up for my newsletter and get, all the freebies and stuff like that. I also have a fun Facebook group called the Amazeballs. So we do a lot of fun stuff in the Amazeballs, so come find me there.
All right, and Amy Spalding.
AmySpalding.com was also taken. I don't know by who, but Amy Award went with a normal author in front. For some reason, it suggested the AmySpalding.com, so I got that, and now I sound like a jerk. Anyway, I'm at theamyspalding.com, not to be confused with any other AmySpaldings.com. And I'm on Instagram a lot at thatames.com. No, thatames, THATAMES. And like I said, my latest book, On Her Terms, just came out last week. I'm in an Airbnb, so I don't have author copies with me, but this
Yay.
great. And it's the latest in my On Hollywood series, but I want to be very clear. It's very loosely a series. Just read whatever one. Read it first if you haven't read the other ones. Do not be intimidated.
Yay. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for
Andy,
coming.
tell us what your next book is.
Well, I did just write Sven, and I'm waiting for my author copies. Sven, I have a hockey series, and I just did Sven, and was the Playboy, and found out early in the book that he is a single dad. Like, surprise. And so he needs a nanny, like you do. And Natalie was a kindergarten teacher who was fired for reading a book about a family with two dads. And so she is looking for a new job and then, single
I
dad,
feel like
nanny,
she's gonna go
hockey
work for
romance.
Sven.
So that's
Love it.
coming. And then my next one coming out is called Mystery in the Mountains, and it is an Appalachian magic shifter one. So
Ooh.
all kinds of fun stuff coming out. And
Awesome.
also this month, there's so many fun things. Book club this week. Jenny L. Howe will be coming to book club as we do her book. And there's the contemporary giveaway and then a non-human giveaway for all of the shifter paranormal stuff and all sorts of stuff going on this month. So thank you guys for helping me celebrate 4 years of doing this wonderful work that I just can't believe I get to do.
Thanks for having us. This was great.
Yeah, thank you
Thanks
so
for doing
much.
the work.
All right, I'm gonna turn off the recording.